All right. So good evening, everyone. Yonnick David is the name. I will. I guess we're gonna just go through. I wanted to go through a few, I guess, things, attitudes, traits that it takes to be an entrepreneur from my view. Obviously, there's no right or wrong way of being an entrepreneur. It's all about what you get out. If you get what you want out of what you're doing and you're happy with that, then cool. So for me, I am an idea factory. Like I always have an idea, and it's like I have an idea, and then I find a way to execute it. A lot of my entrepreneurial ventures, they've all come from hobbies of mine, like the drone services. I just fly drones as a hobby, and I make money. I like suits. I know my good friend Selwyn here likes his suits as well. So I decided to take the connection I had that makes my suit and offer other people here in Guyana suits of the same quality for seemingly decent price. So it's very important. Also, if my dog barges in, don't be surprised. Um, it's I think it's important to find a way of taking your idea, executing it, and then selling it. So you have to develop your idea. You have to take some time, develop your idea, figure out your audience, your target market or your audience, depending on if you're offering a service or a product. You then have to figure out ways of financing that idea. Um, and financing idea isn't necessarily expensive. I know with a lot of times people are of the impression that becoming an entrepreneur means that you need a whole ton of money. My primary business, medical diagnostic supplies, I started that. I think my first spend was $40,000. Yesterday, I spent $9 million. So we've moved from spending 40,000 to now spending $9 million and that's $9 million just yesterday in a very short span of time. So you can start small and then you can scale up and grow, but that also comes with knowing your target and understanding that target. And then you have to be confident in the execution of your idea. And that confidence comes with obviously knowing your target and understanding it and studying it. And it's okay to take some risks. Each of us will have different levels of risk tolerance. I am definitely a major risk taker. So I found myself jumping into murky waters head first, and I've always come out unscathed. But I take less risk now that I'm a bit older and have more responsibilities. Set goals. You have to set your short-term goals and also set your long-term goals. I know when I first started out, I pretty much didn't have any goals set, um, because I guess I was doing things that I loved. My first entrepreneurial venture was in New York City. I did a fashion show. It was an amazing fashion show, but it was a horrible finance. It was horrible financially. I lost quite a bit of money, um, and there were lots of things that went wrong that I should have done. Like there was no contract. I should have had a contract with the venue. Um, there was no marketing plan. I didn't study the weather. It rained the entire day. So there's lots of things. So it always comes back to doing your research. So you have to set your short-term goals. This is what I want in the short term. Maybe you want to make $1 million in the short term, or maybe you want to have X amount of inventory. And then you set your long-term goals as well so that you can work towards those goals. Learn from your mistakes. I put failures in brackets because I don't think in entrepreneurship there is a failure. I think every move is a lesson. Um, Not every idea or business is going to be successful, and you have to be ready to start over, and then you have to be ready to try again after you start over. So the key is persistence, um, and to constantly to stay pushing and don't see a failure as a deterrent. Like I said, my first event, it failed miserably, um, financially, but I didn't pay attention to that aspect of it. I paid attention to the connections I made. I paid attention to the people that I helped, because I was able to have a number of designers showcase their products. I helped a number of models get work, photographers got work. So I built, because of that event and the caliber of the event and the age that I was, the owner of the nightclub. I don't know if you guys know Webster Hall. It's historically, it is one of the best, major, most incredible venues New York City has ever seen. It's one of the oldest nightclubs in New York City. And the fact that my venture, I chose to reach out to them and do it there, the owners were blown away. And the relationship that I had after that, the amount of money I made with them after that, trumped the amount of money I lost at this first event. So I'm very happy that I didn't give up, and I saw that failure as a lesson, and I learned, and I proceeded to work differently from there. Building your brand, for many industries, you're your brand. You're the face of your brand. I'm the face of Guyana Rum Festival. I'm the face of medical diagnostic supplies. So it's important that you understand that you are your brand, and that your reputation stays as clean as possible. Now, we're all human. We're all going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen. So just trying your best to craft the person that you present yourself to be. And I work every day. One of the key focuses that I place is on someone who perceives me, what they think of me. It's very important that when people see me, they feel comfortable. When people see me, they feel that they can approach me. When people see me, they feel that they can trust me. Because without that reputation, then you can't go anywhere. How are you going to network? No one's going to talk to you. I think word of mouth and recommendations are very important. Like, you can spend thousands of dollars on marketing campaigns, but if Selwyn tells a good friend of his that, listen, you should call Yonnick, they're probably going to call him faster than if they just saw a random ad for, I don't know, suit services with 100 other people that will make suits. What will make me stand out? Investing in yourself. Obviously, you've got to spend some money. You've got to spend time. You don't necessarily have to spend more money than time. You can spend more time than money, whichever way. Everyone's entrepreneurial venture is different. So investing in yourself is key in however you decide to invest in yourself. Hone in on your skills. Practice, 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 study, study, study. Learn as much as possible about the things that you can offer that business, so that you can become more skilled in doing it. And obviously then you'll spend less outsourcing and hiring someone else to do certain things. Obviously, as you expand though, you'll definitely have to bring people in. And I think, I'm not sure if it's the next slide or a slide after that, we'll talk about that. Knowing when to ask for help. It's completely okay to ask for help. You can't do it all. As an entrepreneur, there's this, no one knows it all. I don't know it all. Interesting, medical diagnostic supplies. I've never in my life done any class in medicine. I've never tried to be a doctor, but I understood that there was a void in the market here in Guyana. And I said, listen, I want to do this business. I asked a friend who's a medical tech. He does medical tech. He's a med tech. And he gave me the guidance. I made him a silent partner. And now we've got a nice, I'm very happy with the chunk of the market that I have doing medical supplies. And of course, I've been learning more and more things, but I'm always ready to pick up the phone and call someone that understands the medical field, so that I know what I'm doing. So it's okay to ask for help. You don't need to know everything. Networking is very important. You can network anywhere. You can network at a bar. You can network at a restaurant. You can network at a cafe. You can network. It doesn't matter where you are. I think you should always be in networking mode. I'm always in networking mode. So you network, you build your contacts, and then you can then leverage your contacts to help your business. I think it's very important to leverage your contacts. You're not using people. By leveraging your contacts, you are engaging with people that can help you move your business forward. And in engaging with those people, it's a give and take. So they may need you to help them with something as well. And and that's the relationship you have. People skills are important. You have to find a way to, if you're a very introverted person, I think at sometimes you have to be able to communicate with people so that you can network with them and build your contacts. Investors and partners, or versus partners, there's no right or wrong. It's really, what do you really need for your business? Do you need an investor? Do you need some capital? Or do you need a partner that can pull in, that you can pull in, that can pull some weight with you? I've worked with both. I'm currently working with both. For example, Guyana Rum Festival, I have partners. When I did Guyana Rum Festival last year, the graphics and designs, it was very expensive to get those done. So what I did, our graphics guy, I offered him a share in Guyana Rum Festival. So he's now a partner. So all our graphics, all those cool graphics that you see we push out, we no longer have to pay for those. He's now invested into the company, and he's a partner, and he feels, and it was great. I mean, I remember when I gave him his cut last year, his eyes lit up because he's never had so much money in one go. He's never made that money. He's about 22 years old. So I was able to offer him an opportunity to own his own business, to see a return for his hard work. And I can call him up at midnight and like, listen, we need to get a graphic done, and it's done because he now is part of the business. So it's important to give partnerships to people that you think will add value to your company. Investors are also important. I know when I had to scale up medical diagnostic supplies, I had a big order for government, and I had to pick up the phone and say, listen, I need X amount of dollars. This is what I'll offer you. And I got the money. So, and now the business has been going on 3 years now, and it's been doing very well. He gets his check every year. So you have a happy investor, and we have a thriving business. So different businesses, you probably have different things. Preparing for retirement, this is a big thing. Something I wasn't paying attention to in my 20s. Now I'm in my 30s. I'm like, I think I need to start getting myself prepared for retirement, whether it's saving or investing in other projects. I think diversification is important. Putting money into projects that you aren't necessarily running, but that will bring you back some cash. Paying your dues, NIS, and your GRA. Sorry. Oh, taxes, saving. As an entrepreneur, like the first line says, you're solely responsible for preparing yourself for retirement. There's no company issued 401k, so you have to ensure that you set up your own 401k and retirement plan. What does an entrepreneur look like? Just look in the mirror. There's no code of way of dress or anything for an entrepreneur. There's no right or wrong way of being an entrepreneur, just as long as you're not scheming on people. I believe in always being honest. Keep your business honest. And it's all about if you're getting what you want out of it. So if your goal is to make $1 million a year, and you're making $1 million a year and you're happy, then I think you're a successful entrepreneur. If I tell you you can scale up and make 5 and you're like, no, I'm happy with my $1 million, then by all means, keep making your target and continue doing what you're doing to make yourself happy. And that is my little short presentation. I think you're muted, Selwyn. You got to.
Yeah, thank you, Yonnick. Thank you very much for that. The room is now open up for anyone to ask questions, make a comment. Let's have a conversation around this presentation. But let me start first by asking you, Yonnick. You mentioned that the failure you had with that fashion show venture. What made you keep going after that failure? I mean, having lost money, I mean, that's major for a lot of people. What made you decide to keep doing it?
Well, for one, the whole nightlife industry was something that something that I really liked. And like I mentioned, a lot of times my businesses are always starting out as hobbies. So there was one, it was something I liked. So it was fine, you feel, but it's something that I'm still gonna enjoy doing. And two, I remember when I was in the office of the manager of the club, and he was giving me a hard time. He's like, listen, we need X amount of dollars from you. I'm like, oh my God, where am I getting this money from? And my mom had flown in for the show. So she was sitting there. So we pulled out the credit cards, we paid off what we had to pay out. And she said to me, don't worry, next time you'll do better. So I think those words were the words that the mere fact that she didn't say, I think, oh my God, you're wasting this money. She said, don't worry, the next time you'll do better. I think those words have always stayed with me throughout every single venture that I've ever done. I've always remembered those words. Don't worry, next time you'll do better.
Thank you. Anybody? Let me speak directly to the entrepreneurs. I'm sure many of you have been in situations where a little moral support would have helped to taking you over the hill. And I'm sure some of you have received these words of encouragement. What was that like for you? Anybody?
I guess I'll jump in here. You see, when you're on the journey alone, there's one thing that gives you wings, and that's validation. And getting someone else to just say, hey, you know, I really recognize and understand the why behind whatever you're doing, in spite of the fact that you're not seeing anything right now. Just those kind of words of encouragement, that validation can just give you wings as an entrepreneur and just keep you powering through all of the doubt. So that's tremendously helpful. But while I have the floor, I'd like to go back to the whole failure rate, because I'm gonna ask, and this is not just for Yonnick, it's like, well, Yonnick shared this as let's say the first venture kind of flopped. And I see that trend happening a lot. It happened with me. It's like every single time you try something new, it doesn't seem to work out. You have to always go back to the drawing board, learn from that mistake, and then the second shot usually takes. Maybe it's a third. I don't know if anyone else can validate that trend.
Yep. Yeah, I'll jump in there and say, yeah, definitely it is the iterative process of an entrepreneur, I think, is something that we don't speak a lot of. And for once you worked with any kind of engineering, you'll understand that you do something, put it out there, get feedback, use that feedback, and sometimes the feedback from people help you more than 60% of the way to the next venture. So that first venture is essentially putting it out there to test with the population, your customers. Once you get that feedback, everything after that will not be like the last one if you take it seriously. But most importantly, it allows you to produce a product much more aligned to what the customer wants. And I think regardless of your field, that is critical.
Yeah. I think another thing, for a lot of times as an entrepreneur, we have the idea and we try to execute the idea before we go into our networking phase. And what I've learned over time is that we can learn from other people's mistakes. And your first venture don't necessarily flop, or maybe your first venture in a new field won't necessarily flop if you speak to other people that have not necessarily maybe done the same thing, but others, and try to learn from the mistakes that they've made, and kind of engage those mistakes in your planning, so that you can skip over maybe some sort of incident that will cause you to flop. Because I had no net, I had the network that I had was minimal, and people that I met afterwards, I was like, if I had known you guys, this would have never happened.
Vishnu, I want to speak directly to you because I remember having a conversation with you once, and we were discussing something private that we wanted to get into with Brand Newton. I remember one of your cautions about entrepreneurship is that while you teach this stuff and you are responsible for many successes, what you mentioned to me, and I remember how it resonated with me, is that what you also are privy to is the many failures. And you see the tears, you hear the anguish, you're present to all of that. What would you add to this conversation that can give us some perspective on entrepreneurship and those early failures? And as Eldon and Yonnick mentioned, they persevered and they can speak of successes right now. But how would you weave this into the conversation?
Thanks, Alvin. And Yonnick's story is really a good representation of what entrepreneurs go through. Most entrepreneurs, in many cases, quit after the first or second failure because they have a lot of other pressures on them as well, especially if they have to take care of the family or they have a family that they just started themselves. Or they just ran out of money and they couldn't convince the savings ended and they couldn't convince anybody else to invest some more money. I think something that really stood out with Yonnick is his willingness to partner and willingness to bring other people in. I think when I finish, I would like to ask Yonnick what has been his experience with partners, because I know that it is one fast way to grow, but I've had more successes with international partners than local partners. I found that the culture is very much that they're afraid. I think greed pops up a lot and fear pops up a lot, and they sometimes put themselves in this spiral that either they're giving up too much or but international partners, I found that they clearly understand that when two parties or more parties can add different values that are needed for that partnership to succeed, each party does what they had committed to do. And that once each party does what they had committed to do, then if the business model is good, success is almost imminent. The statistics are that 10 to 20% of entrepreneurs actually make it. The vast majority fail and end up in the workforce. And I think normally they come to me when it's way too late, when they owe everybody, they owe the bank, family doesn't want to talk to them, they have a set of inventory that is about to expire or go out of date or are out of style, that they've invested so much money into. And in many cases, we actually have to work on a liquidation plan of how do we get you out of what you've done, repair as many of the relationships that Yonnick also spoke about, because those relationships are as valuable as money. In many cases, I see the relationships I have with people as far more valuable than money in the bank, because I can call on them, they can call on me, and things that the bank can't do for me, these relationships can do for me. So helping them repair those relationships and clearing up back their name with paying off as much of the debts as possible is one way. And then actually looking at what are they really good at, because they may have been good at something, decided to make it into a business, weren't successful in the business, and then also forgot that they're really good at that thing. But maybe they're good at it and they should have been in an organization that has a framework that allows them to be the best at that and earn really well. Many, I would say half of those 80% of the people that come to me, we actually then find them an organization. And in many cases, they know the organization they should have been working for or be part of, They've known it a long time, but just they didn't know how to get back into that organization. And entrepreneurs are usually good salespeople. Not always. In some cases, they're really good at the product and they suck at sales. But most of them can actually sell because they've had to have so much practice convincing people about how good their product or their service is. So they've had the practice that when they realize what the company is or the organization is that they should be joining, we would just have them sit down and do a proposal to the company and say, here, this is what I'll bring to the table. This is what I think I want to be paid. And this is what I think I'll generate for you. So they become an intrapreneur instead of an entrepreneur. And the big difference between an intrapreneur and an entrepreneur is that in an intrapreneur, you're allowed to still utilize your creativity and your ideas and everything, but you're in a safer environment with an organization that can provide the funding and other resources. Whereas an entrepreneur is doing it on the outside, almost all by themselves. So I wish that more entrepreneurs knew this before they face all those failures. I was very fortunate that my father had a master's in failing at ventures, right? If there was anybody who started, I don't think there's a person who started more businesses than he has. And I don't think there's a person who is very, very good at starting them, but finishing them, it's another story. But I always utilize that as my classroom because I saw it right in front of me. It was easy for me to learn from that and not to repeat the mistakes. And I love learning from other people's failures as well, especially when I see them going through it and I'm explaining it to them and they still don't want it. And I say, great, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? And let me check back with you again in a month or 3 months or 6 months. And for them, hindsight is 20/20 because then they say, well, I should have done this, should have done that. However, in the process, I'm hoping that they're learning from their mistake or their failure. But I am definitely, it's a lot of us here have diplomas and degrees and all of that. We paid a lot of money for that, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, for education. The amount of education I've gotten from people's failures that I didn't have to pay for is more valuable than all the degrees that I have put together. So I would strongly, if I could add something to this conversation, is be a student of the other entrepreneurs that you're facing and just be a student of life because everything can teach you a lesson and I document them, right? So I have books. So as I learn the lessons, I immediately document them and I may still, you and I are from the analog age, Selwyn. So what it does for me is that when I write something down, even if I never see it again, it gets stored in my mind. I think just writing it down, and I would really encourage you that. I'm sure that Yonnick, from his failures, would have, and we can call it a failure, but he explained, the one with the nightclub and the initial fashion business. Financially, it didn't make sense, but it worked in other ways. And I'm sure that he's figured out how to make it work financially if he had to do it all over again. No. But the same thing, you don't just need to learn from your own mistakes. Learn from as many as possible. And today I was working out another problem, and I usually every single room that you come into in our building has at least one whiteboard. Some of them are wrapped in whiteboards because we are visual creatures. So I had to figure out a tender that we're participating in, and I was triangulating where the price needs to be in order to, win this tender. And I couldn't just think it through. So I just threw it on the board and I asked, my wife said, well, why don't you do this? I said, well, why didn't you come in here earlier? I was on this for half an hour. But when somebody else can see what you're thinking, remember as entrepreneurs, we like to gaff, right? We talk to our friends, but nobody can see in our brain. Make it visual so somebody else can look at it and say, hey, what's happening? Why are you doing this thing here? Nobody else can see straight into your brain. So that's why, we have the most whiteboards in a building, I think, probably more than a school. In our small office here, we probably have like 24 whiteboards. Just because of that process. And some of our whiteboards never get erased because the idea needs to be there. If I need to discuss something with someone, I need to be able to pull that portion, take them into our war room, and here, did you see this? How can we do this? How can we do that? So that's another tip I would also want to leave. Make it as visual as possible. We are very visual creatures, and we have to feed ourselves in a way in which we can consume that information. You're muted, someone.
Thanks a lot, Vishnu. That there's a lot to unpack there. I want to open the floor to everyone here. Please jump in. Feel free to jump in when you want to. But one of the things that jump out at me, Vishnu, is the visual aspect of it and collaboration. I know I benefit a lot from collaborating and having conversations with people about what it is I am doing. And visualization is very important. So I want to ask anyone, how many of you has had major breakthroughs after having a conversation with someone about a particular problem, or at least showing them on a whiteboard or a piece of paper what is it you're working on, and they're able to see something that you have not seen?
Every day.
Every day.
Like I too, I have my whiteboard here. I have a primary time we meet. We take the whiteboard and we write every single thing down, and then we go through it afterwards. A lot of the people that I work with, they just so everyone is, we talk over the computer, but I still listen. Guys, we got to meet once a week. Sit down, put these things down on the whiteboard, and fill out whiteboard right here, and it definitely works.
I want to bring in John Hoosty. John, welcome to our meetup, John. John, you manage, well, most people here manage businesses, but John, I want to get an idea from you how, I don't know if you were with us when Yonnick was making his presentation about failures and perseverance, but how did failure and perseverance show up in your life, or your venture, I should say?
So, and just give me 2 minutes, please. Just 2 minutes. And I'll
All
start.
right, fine. I'll ask the same question to Evie. Evie, you have several businesses between you and Miguel, and I'm still trying to figure out how you manage all these various ventures and still keep a very calm disposition, at least the side of you that I see. So you have obviously been encouraged to get into several different ventures. How did failure show up for you in the beginning or in any one of these ventures, and why do you continue to persevere?
In the beginning, if we're talking about in the beginning, failure for me in the beginning was, like we're talking about, trying to express my ideas and express my vision to a team. And, because we mostly deal in emerging products or services, and a lot of things that we ventured into just either didn't exist before, or the talent to carry through the business ideas really weren't existent at the time, especially in the case of like the coffee shop, where we had to like teach barista and so many other things. So failure definitely in the beginning was like having the resources, the human resource to carry through plans and put things into place, and then like just trying to do everything yourself and suffering some amount of burnout. But having community is important. Having people that will encourage you to rest or take parts of your load from you so that you can at least try to be optimal is really important. I always talk about having a strong community around you, and ensuring that you're communicating fluently and clearly, what your needs are, and not just your current need, what the future outcome needs to look like. And I struggled with that. Like I would know what I need the future outcome to be, but I would be so focused on getting the now handled that I didn't express myself properly, and I didn't like let everybody in on the vision. So once I learned that you should start by explaining the vision and then rally people around it, I think I was able to streamline a lot more, and I was able to get a lot more people invested in what we do and how we want it to be done. So I would say in the early years, that was it for me, feeling to communicate.
Before you go, Evie, I this question comes to mind. You and Miguel, husband and wife, partners. How does a collaboration show up for the two of you? And B, what Vishnu mentioned just about visualization. And I guess I'm taking a dive into your operations. And you know, you don't have to explain everything if it's proprietary knowledge, but I'm just curious to know, how does collaboration show up between the two of you? And you just said sometimes you have this visualization of what you want the future to be, but very often you're focused on getting through with the now. How does Miguel complement or not complement you? Give us a day in the two of you collaborating on a particular project. What is that like?
Well, I hope that everything I say here, he'll agree with me. If not, you know, he'll tell you his part, I'm sure. But honestly, we look at it as that we're two parts of one whole, and I have my role to play, and he has his role to play. For the most part, people know me as the front person of the business. My discipline is PR, marketing, business development. Everything that happens before we get to product, everything that happens before we get to execution. And then, you know, we have a development team that works with Miguel. So when it gets to that stage, then it's over to that team. And that's really how we have structured it. And I think it works well for us, because then he knows what my responsibilities are. I know what his are, and we not often step on each other's toes, because I know when I need to just, you know, give it up to what he has to do, and he allows me to do what I have to do. And then what you see in terms of delivery is just like two completely different disciplines coming together to produce a product or service. Because, you know, you guys talk about whiteboarding and stuff like that. And a big part of what we do in web development and mobile application development is a lot of prototyping, rapid prototyping. So, you know, we have to talk about how it will be used, how it will work, not only how it will be treated internally, but also how it will be received externally. And even in a coffee shop, everything, you know, like all across all of our business, we have a very kind of strategic plan of how it happens internally, how it happens externally. And I am both the internal and external, and he's more of the internal of how it all works.
Thank you, Evie. John, feel free to jump in whenever you're ready. Eureka Primus. Oh, you ready, John?
Yeah. So
Okay.
Well, for me, I would say when I first started, failure was inevitable, because at that point you're inexperienced. So there is a lot to learn. And as Vishnu likes to say, you don't know what you don't know. So at that point, I remember there were projects that I tried to get, or acquisitions I tried to make happen, and I didn't, because you just didn't know what to do. I remember also there was a big project I was on, and we ended up messing the thing up because we were inexperienced at the time. This was like about 5 years ago. And I remember I sat down at my desk and I opened up a bottle of bourbon and drank that shit raw. Just drank it hot, didn't even put any ice in the glass, because it was a rough night. But I remember I told myself, listen, and I was even in tears at that point. I was just, because it was a big loss. But I said to myself, look, this is just a phase. Sleep on it, get up tomorrow, continue doing what you're doing. Because what I've realized over the years is that you're gonna gain more knowledge. You know, people are gonna gravitate towards you, your clients are gonna build up, your team is gonna build up. And so right now, the mindset that I have is one of, I'm not afraid to fail in any way. And if I do, it's just a phase. You just got to be fearless. It's like, just to digress a bit, it's like if you're going after a girl, even if you really want the girl and she rejects you, give it a second or third try. There's no shame in it. And it's just really a mindset thing. I think once you understand that, and a lot of people don't, what factors into this is the supporting cast around you, which I think Yonnick may have mentioned before. Like when his mom told him, don't worry about it, just you'll do better next time. That's a powerful statement, especially coming from your mother. That's a very powerful, those words resonate with you, so it's those moments, those around you who encourage you to do what you got to do, and just they're your supporting cast. I mean, at the end of the day, no man is an island. There are a number of people on this call who have supported me, who continue to support me and assist me, and I can turn to for advice. I mean, yourself included, and that gives you peace, I would say, in doing whatever you're doing on a daily basis, because they're going to be tough days, they're going to be rough days, and you gotta be ready for it, but it's just temporary.
Thank you. Vanda, how has failure showed up in your venture when you first started, if at all? And how did you handle that?
I'm still having for failure, so but I see failure now as something that I look forward to then, as in a sense of, if I know that it's here, if something didn't work, that means I need to go and check what need fixing then. And it's like doing revision then. You already have this what do you call it? Like a problem to solve, but a letter you missed or something. So when you go over that, you kind of like revise it, so you have a clear understanding of how we're going to do it again. So failure for me is something nice then. You get a chance to do it over better, and you face failure with confidence then. But before you fail, you cry, you think, and you don't even know what to do next. But entrepreneurial journey isn't easy. It's like breathing in and out, up and down, but it's nice. As we're talking about entrepreneurial spirit, there is the entrepreneurial spirit that wakes you up back, for you to be for you to have that energy to continue. Because sometimes, many times I wanted to give up, but there is someone there or something that triggers in me that you need to give it another try. How about if you try it in this angle, or there is energy to go on then. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Vanda. Wow. Eldon, I'm thinking about you right now because you have a very interesting setup. You train very young people. So in the beginning, that had to have been challenging because you made a decision to incorporate the very young into your ecosystem and train them, and now you have a viable business. But as Vanda spoke just now about not giving up and energy and trying again, trying a different angle, what are you hearing, Eldon, and how does that relate, what you're hearing relates to your particular environment?
Yeah, it's the only thing that really bubbles up when you ask that question, when you present that, Selwyn, is there was this single constant that was there at the very beginning before anything started, and it's still around, and it hasn't changed, and that is the best way that I can describe it is the why. Why are we on this path? Why am I doing this? Why did I start what I started along the way? And you know, when you start things off, that single constant, that why, it gives you this gusto. So you're on this path, you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna get this done, I'm gonna do it. And in that initial phase, there's a rite of passage that probably every entrepreneur goes through, where it involves a lot of failure, because you're going through with this gusto and you're not listening to anyone. You just know that you have to realize that why, and then you falter or things don't work out as you imagine them, and then reality hits, and then you have to refactor and understand, okay, well, let me temper this gusto, refocus on the why, and pick myself up and understand what I did wrong. But I believe that as long as you have that why, it will force you through the points of failure really smoothly. And I believe that's probably most likely what we all have. Many persons who don't have that connection with their why often give up after the first failure. But you know, failure is like a rite of passage, I believe, for every entrepreneur. There are even movements, worldwide movements, where entrepreneurs get together and talk about failures, just failures, because there's so much wisdom in just unpacking what you did wrong or what others may have done wrong, and Vishnu keeps these notebooks about failures, these pitfalls, and so on. There's way more there's a higher concentration of wisdom in failure than there is in something that's successful. I believe so. And what's more is that when you personally own your failure, it catalyzes your future success. Because I can't think of moments in my life where I went from success to success. It was always, okay, well, you win a little, you fail a lot, and then you win some more, and then you fail again, and then you win. And it just, but what happens after a while is that you get so accustomed to the failures that you don't really pay attention to them as much. And you're easily able to fail really big, but you reduce the time during which it keeps you down. So people look from the outside and all they see is success, but little do they realize that on the surface, you're taking a beating, but you're still forging ahead because you're connected to your why, and that powers you through. So that's what I have to share about that. And about the whole worldwide movement, where entrepreneurs get together and talk about failures. There's a site that I can share. It's a bit vulgar, but there's some interesting stuff there. So I'm going to put it in the chat. Let's see here. I'm going to put it in the chat there. If you guys want to check this out, feel free. Thanks.
Thanks, Eldon. I want to shift gears a little bit. Malika, I'm going to come back to you because you're an interesting story. You're young, you just started your business, and I imagine there's some trepidation there and so on. I want you to think about this for a moment. I'll get back to you, but I want to speak to some folks who might be social entrepreneurs, like Sarah Barrett and Eureka was and is now an entrepreneur herself, started her own business. I would like to hear from you. What are you hearing in this conversation? Eureka, would you like to take this? What are you hearing? From Yonnick's presentation and from what the entrepreneurs are saying about failures and perseverance. If my memory serves me right, you worked with women who were in danger. I'll let you talk more about that. And you were on boards that deal with women that were being marginalized in mining and so on and so forth. And now you have your own business. Those two worlds have intersected in your world. What are you hearing here tonight that you can shed some light on in terms of your personal journey, your business journey rather, and just give us some perspective, if you don't mind.
Good evening, everyone. Just to touch a bit on what Selwyn had mentioned, I serve as the president of the Guyana Women Miners Organization and also the director of a safe home for victims of human trafficking. one of the key messages that strings through all of the presentations this evening is the opportunities that could arise through failure. Oftentimes, as young entrepreneurs, and even no matter the age of someone, there is a fear of failure and the perception that failure means ultimately that the business will close or that will be the end of that venture. Even for us at Stabrook, when we started our expat integration services in October 2019, by November 2019, we were already bidding for contracts. And in February, we were one of two companies shortlisted for the provision of services to an oil and gas company. And by March 2020, COVID was here. So everyone got this very short note in your email that the entire process will be put on hold indefinitely. And for us, it felt as though you're going with this momentum, it's going to build from here, and suddenly everything stops. And even when the airports close, it means that for that extended period, there was nothing in which we could have done with regards to clients. So what we focus then is on how can we improve ourselves and improve the provision of our services. So we took that time to attend like international courses on the services in which we want to provide international standards, learning about that as well as to integrate softwares. And shifting to the social work in which we have been doing for both women who are in mining and women who are affected by mining, specifically victims of GBV, trafficking in persons, and other social ills. Immediately following with any horrific incident, they are given time to start rebuilding from the inside out with psychological services before we support them to acquire a skill or in some cases relocate to a new area if it's for their safety. So oftentimes when traumatic experiences happen, whether that is crimes against women or even failure, the initial thought is to stop, but oftentimes it's more useful to you to reflect and to identify the key elements in your failure that if you improve on could lead to your success. Because whether it is women taking time to go through the process of counseling and identifying the life in which they want to rebuild for themselves and then being supported to realize that, or an entrepreneur who may have a failed venture and taking the time to see what went wrong, how can we fix it, and how can we do better. They are different but similar processes involved. And oftentimes, I think society and even some of our support networks do not fully understand that their support is always needed and their support is critical to even in some cases how you see yourself. Because even take for instance one of my closest friends, she is an entrepreneur in South Africa, and they had very stringent COVID measures in place, and as a result she lost her business. It was really the support of her friends and her family that took her through that period because she went into a state of chronic depression. So recognizing not only failure, but the need for support and the need for us to keep going. And even if you don't have the support, there is no better motivator than yourself. And there's no better motivation than the fact that you know that you can do better and you know that you can build from this. Because once you have life and breath, you're always learning, you're always growing, and you can always come back and do it better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Malika, I'm giving you some time to think this through. I'm going to go to Sarah. Sarah, you know, we can't have a show without me calling on you. What are you hearing here tonight?
Alrighty, hi everybody. I'm trying to show my face a little. It's a little tired today. So I'm hearing well, first of all, I want to say, and I think some of you who do know me on this call, it's that I have tended to do things in Guyana before things are a trend yet. Or so, for example, I was one of the early pioneering bloggers in Guyana, and I used that to analyze politics, and I did that through telling my own personal story. And for me, and failure has served me. I've benefited from failure tremendously. My first big failure was that I did not understand fully what I wanted to do and what exactly I was good at and how I could apply that. And so, because I was unclear about that over the years, I tried to fit myself into spaces. I tried the corporate space, the development space, and I just couldn't find the sweet spot, because I hadn't clearly understood me and my mission and how I could apply my skills. My second big failure, and Yannick spoke about this, being aware of your brand, being aware of how people perceive you, and that's so very important. And when you function in a space like Guyana's context, and we have a very polarized space politically, it's very difficult to function from a place of ideas, and this is what entrepreneurs do. We look at the issues, we look at finding solutions to the issues. We don't really care if it falls on this X or Y side of the political line. For us, it's about addressing something. But unfortunately, in Guyana, you get branded based on how your solution is perceived, served politically, and it can be very stressful and a bit intimidating for a young person starting up to navigate those waters. And where I failed is that I wasn't realistic about that. I didn't accept it. And when you don't recognize something as a challenge, then you don't address it, and you end up suffering all of the negative impacts of that thing. And so what I had to do is once I defined, and I did this during 2018, I think it was, I did it. But there's a clear memory I have from 2018, and it involves Vishnu. So I had been invited by the PSC to speak at their first business development forum, I think. And they asked me to talk about interpersonal relationships. And I showed up at that event and I tried to present deeply academic ideas from a development perspective to a corporate audience, and I lost everybody, including myself. And even at the end of that, I was like, Sarah, well, you just said it. And then I had a very, very brief chat with Vishnu and Roshaf, and Vishnu said, Sarah, I would have liked to have heard more of your personal story. And that was a big, a big shaping moment for me. And I've never told you this, Vishnu. It was a big shaping moment for me, much like the moment I had with Selwyn in 2014, when Selwyn asked me what next. And I thought about that, and I realized that I wouldn't be able to fit into the corporate world. I wasn't exactly a social entrepreneur. What I was something that I didn't know how to define yet. And today I know that what I am is a political entrepreneur. And I'm sure that we have a few of us floating about Guyana, but they still haven't managed to define what their niche is. And so, defined, figured out mission, and how to deal with perception. And the way I dealt with navigating these waters of polarization is that I rebranded myself as somebody who was interested in working with anyone that was focused on the greater good for the country. And I made it very clear what my agenda was, what solution I am focused on. And I didn't care if you were the red party, the blue party, the orange party, from corporate, from development. I was going to work with you so long as it advanced this particular mission. And when people recognize that, listen, you're willing to work, you come with a certain set of principles, you're going to be honest, they become more willing to work with you. And you're able to develop relationships, which, as Vishnu noted earlier, those relationships are so very important. And you build trust over time, and you become well positioned. Your relationships become your most valuable thing. And then my third failure is the lack of balance. So, sometimes when you got an idea and it's just burning and like you just want to get it done, I did that so much, and then what would I do? I would be like working for 14, 16 hours. I would forget about my family. I would forget about my health. I would forget to take a time out to pay attention to my education and just to rest and recharge. And then by 2019, I ended up sick. And I was off the radar for a bit. And I've been struggling with health issues for this last year, but I am so much better now because I've learned the importance of balance. Being an entrepreneur, you become so much more in tune with the need for mental, physical, spiritual balance. And you really have to find that sweet spot for yourself. So when I hear all of the stories that you're sharing here tonight, I can identify so much with it because as a political entrepreneur myself, I've had to grapple with the same things and deal with the same things. So that's my two bit. And thanks, Vishnu, for that little bit that you said to me in 2018.
Thank you, Sarah. And I'm glad that you're recovering and you're taking some time to infuse some balance in your life. Balance is very important, even though many of us violate that principle. Dr. Collins, you're busy in the theater, you're busy in the hospital environment, but you're also an entrepreneur. What are you hearing here tonight, and how did failure show up in your journey?
Hey, good night, good night.
Good night.
I'm actually on call tonight, so just in and out.
Okay.
Keeping at everyone's presentation, everyone's contribution. From what I got here tonight, I have noticed that a lot of people came from different backgrounds, a lot of different failures. And one of the thing about the entrepreneurial spirit is that, as the presenter said, is more or less what you want, right? So if, as he mentioned, if 500,000 is what you want, then at the end of the year or whatever, um, that is your um, success story. But a lot of times, to get pumped up, to say that we are an entrepreneur, we read a lot of books that say talk about the success stories of people, but a lot of times we never hear a lot about the failures, and hearing a lot about different persons failures actually give us, for me, as an example, this entire session actually give me an opportunity to see the different aspects of person's failure. I myself have experienced failures on a number basis, and it's something that we don't really like to talk about. But talking about them, also identifying that other persons actually have these problems, um, is something that would actually give us that drive to persevere, and that is one of the most important thing of um, the entrepreneur.
Mhm.
That is my contribution.
Thank you very much. Malika, are you ready for us?
Hi, yes, I am. Good night, everybody, again. Um, I think this is an interesting topic because recently I have experienced failure. I wouldn't say specifically what it is, but it has caused me to want to isolate myself from everything. I just wanted to give up on everything and just quit. So I went through a phase where I wasn't talking to anyone, I wasn't speaking to my mentors, I was just all alone. And this experience has been different from my previous failures because I, when I've experienced failures in the past, I was always motivating myself. and I was so energetic and I pulled myself out of it quickly. But this time it was a bit different. And instead of trying to talk to anyone, I was just like, okay, I'm over it. I don't want to do this anymore. Um, but as a lot of you mentioned, having the support of people around you, that really helped, especially from my mentors and just my friends and family. They were able to say, because I didn't tell anybody what was going on, but people notice things. They were able to give me bits of advice and give me encouraging words and just checking in on me. And so that pushed me or motivated me to continue doing what I wanted to do. And it kind of bring me to a place where I needed to reevaluate what it is that I was doing wrong or where it went wrong, and then plan my way forward. And persons from just attending like a few seminars and so where persons I remember specifically when Dr. Durga was at one of our sessions in Yan, when he was talking about the importance of having a mentor. And I think that's when I reached out to Mr. Collins, who also is one of my mentors. And, we just had a conversation. And there I was motivated and, inspired to start doing what I wanted to do, what I was doing, and just pick myself up and keep going. So that process was basically going through accepting that I have failed, looking at the areas in which I failed, and then identifying the why, as in, okay, this is why you're doing this. Just remember, these are the reasons, and then planning my way forward. So I am still currently in the phase of planning my way forward. So I appreciate having this conversation with everyone, and it's good to know because a lot of times, you when you are when you're going through a failure, you're experiencing a failure, you want to be able to speak with persons who can relate to you. And because people don't usually share their failures or things like that, they just, kind of put a quote on it and be like, okay, you got this, you can do this, just get up. Sometimes you just want to hear a real life experience of how this person overcame or overcome what it is that they were dealing with. So I'm really happy that I made this session. So yeah.
Great. Time runs away when you're having fun and a conversation gets very interesting. And I was thinking we were going to end at 8:30. We're now at 8:42. So I'm going to ask your permission for us to go to 9 o'clock, next 50 minutes or so, because I really want to bring Anika Abel in. She has a real-time story that can help to shed some light on dealing with a failure and how you recover from it. And I also want to speak to Shawnette Percival, who's in New York, and she's a social worker. She deals with people and where systems fail and the family structure fails. So I'd like to hear her perspective on what she sees sometimes and how that affects her. And Nikita Edwards, an attorney. Nikita, my question for you is, what are you hearing here tonight, and how do you see failure in your own personal trajectory, personal journey, but how do you really see failure with people that you from time to time defend? I'm not sure if you're a public defender or so on, but share with us, please.
Can you repeat your question, Mr.
Sure,
Collins?
certainly. As an attorney and dealing with the public, I'm not sure exactly in what capacity, but two parts. How has failure showed up in your personal journey? and overcoming that? And how do you see failures sometimes showing up in perhaps some of your clients, some of the people that you come in contact with from time to time?
Good night, everyone. Personally, I think initially for me was my fear of networking. I was always afraid that if you reach out to somebody, they're always going to have one up on you. So instead of saying, oh, well, you know what, I'm going through this, you keep it to yourself so nobody knows, but then you blame the world for everything bad that's happening to you. And I had to learn sometime around 2015, 2016, I was like, oh my God, I want to go to law school, but I don't have the money to, but I wasn't saying anything to anyone. And then it was like, it got even real when you got your grades and now, are you going to go to law school or are you going to just remain silent? And then I remember reaching out to a particular individual and he said, I don't think my organization can help, but I think you should try this organization. And when I wrote that organization, it changed my entire life because they were willing and able to assist. But if I did not reach out, then I would have been sitting here still waiting on attending law school and being an attorney. So for me, I'm still working on my fear of saying or being vocal about what is happening, because the last thing I want is for anybody to say, I did this for her and that kind of thing. So, but I'm still learning how to network. So there's that. As it relates to, well, I am a public defender. So most times you see people who would have failed at, especially with the juveniles that we defend. It is not even, a part of it is not their failure. It's a system that they were brought up in. So you have parents who understand now more than ever that a child under 14 cannot be charged. And the process that comes with that. So you find now a lot of juveniles are committing offenses. But if you speak with these juveniles, it is an adult who is forcing them or enabling them in this life that it's not healthy or productive for them. And that is always the hardest, because all you can do is show up and you defend. But there is a child that has now to go back into that same environment and meet the same persons who would have caused him now to be before a magistrate or a judge. And that is always hard. And it's because most times the load is so much that you really don't get a chance to call and see how this juvenile is doing or how this female is doing. Because as fast as you're done with that client, there is another person who has an issue who needs your attention. So I'm still working on that, but all in all, I find the discussions here very pertinent because I have plans on, starting my own business. So it's always good to hear that it is important to network. It is important to meet people, have these relationships, and those kind of things. So thank you guys for the discussion tonight. That's my bit.
You're welcome. Thank you. Shauna, this is a perfect segue for you. Here is Nikita, a public defender who comes in contact with these cases. And I suppose very heart-wrenching, but she doesn't have the time because of her workload to follow up. But you're in a space where that's what you do. You work with these individuals. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about, what you hear here tonight, how it resonates with you, and about, working with young people or families that have these kinds of issues.
Okay, hi, good evening, everyone. I would say what I heard tonight was, that the word that stuck out to me a lot was fear, and or failure. And I felt, and working in my field, I know that that's part of success. Because in order for you to succeed, you have to fail at something to learn. What is it that needed to change? What needs to improve on? And working with families and children as well. Most of the families are, I would say, they definitely need that extra hand, that outside input to come in to help to guide them and show them what is it that's missing or what is it they need, what kind of resources we can help provide for them, because they feel stuck in the situation that they're currently in. So with that being said, ultimately our main focus is to try to help teach these families different ways to view life and to make better decisions, because most of the time the situations they're in is from poor decision making. So ultimately, that can also be used as a learning experience as well. If you don't go through something, you would never know how strong you are and what is it that caused you to be in that place, to get out of that place, to succeed. So my main focus as well as an individual is to try to help others and see what needs to be done to produce change. And to me, kind of fear kind of helps drives that as failure as well, because ultimately you want to succeed, but if you don't try and fail, you wouldn't push yourself as much to get to that next level. And I was listening to the young lady speak about, something similar to depression, or from feel that fear or lack of feel, or not fear and failure. She kind of internalized it and kind of kept away from others, and not really didn't really speak on it, which is very prevalent in a lot of the families that we work in. Depression is very high. A lot of other mental illness is very high as well, and it's very important to have that one person or community to try to be there to express your feelings, because when you have different thoughts and feelings and you keep it inside, it's very dangerous. It's always good to have that resource. We call it in at work, we call it what we call it. I forgot the term, but we always ask families, or your support system. Who is your support system? It's necessary. It's a must, regardless of what field you're working in. You need that external help, that person or people that's there to help push you and guide you, because you can't really do anything on your own. You need that motivation. You need that check in. You need that. Okay, let's work as a team. Let's try to figure out what can be done. Because ultimately, when you're left with your thoughts, especially if those thoughts are negative, it takes a very big effect on you, not just on you and the people that's around you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Shawnette. Anika, Abel, you want to jump in here?
Good night, everyone. Good night. Nope, I was enjoying listening, but that's okay. All right, so for my added 2 cents, and I'm gonna make this short because I know we're approaching 9. Um, Failure for me is, I accept it because it's what builds experience. If you don't fall down and you go through whatever work it is, whether you have a support system, a coach, a mentor, whoever it is, this is what builds experience. So as you go forward, you use those experiences from the failure to help others and motivate others. So when you're in the moment, of course, it seems as if it's the end of the world, because it seems so to me. At first, I took it on my own, but having resourceful people around me, it allowed me to know that I don't have to do this alone. I don't have to go through it alone. I don't need to know everything. And I move forward from there. Also, when you have to have great communication for those who would have staff, because many times it's my staff who would tell me that something is amiss, because sometimes you don't see it, or sometimes you tell yourself that the path that you're choosing is the correct one or the effective one. And then if they have the passion in it, and feel the same way that you feel, they usually tell me like, this is not going to work. Let's try it this way. Of course, I have to be open to say, all right, let's try it your way and see. A majority of times, yes, whatever they sees, it's, it comes true. But you have to have great communication, great system around you, resourceful people and stuff. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. Like I said, when you get these challenges, it builds experience and it allows you now to be in the capacity of being someone else's mentor or guidance to whatever it is. So sometimes we just have to take those bruises and pains and hurt and build from it. So that's my added 2 cents. I've heard a lot this evening, and the session this evening was, very educational and inspiring. And as usual, it's a great platform where we can share and learn from each other as well. Even though we're not or may not be in the same field of work or whatever it is, we still pick 1 or 2 things up from everyone who shared something. So
Thank you.
that's my input, Mr. Collins. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, I repeat, we're never more connected than when we share our stories. Before I ask Yonnick to take us out, is there anybody else who would like to make a statement, say something,
I would just like to thank Sarah and Laika for the acknowledgement, and it's it's good to hear, and it's not that it's expected. It's you know me, so when I say what I have to say when I have to say it. If I notice the opportunity, I don't want to come back at night and think, I should have told Yonnick this, or I should have said this. I really want to live my life without any regrets. But the reason I'm saying that is that all of us impact other people that you may never know. I'm lucky tonight to be here to hear, 2 persons say something about something that, I now remember that day with Sarah speaking, and it really impressed me. But I thought, her, so I said it. But we all have this power, and you may never know the positive impact you make, but not because you may not know it means you should not do it. Because there's too many people out there, when I hear them, they say, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to anybody. But I think it does. Right? I really believe it does, because if it didn't, these 2 young ladies wouldn't have mentioned anything about it years after, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I do get accused, and I do it unconsciously. My coach told me, I'm already confident. Push your confidence just to the boundary of it becoming arrogant and abrasive. So I've tested it out for 10 years of pushing myself just to get to the point of arrogant and abrasive. If some people don't call me arrogant and abrasive, I'm not doing a good job. Because when I get to that point, people who need to hear me will hear me. If I keep filtering and keeping myself to the left, the people who need to hear me will never hear me, just because I'll be fearful of some people calling me arrogant and abrasive. So that's a lesson that allowed me to walk up to Sarah and say, hey, and I think she asked, or I think we walked up to her, and I told her, and then I think Roche also added to that. But it takes, not being fearful of coming across as arrogant and abrasive. Sarah could have said, what's wrong with you, bald head? What are you telling me? Right? She could have taken it the wrong way. I do my best to be as polite as I can, but I think that's probably something that I want to acknowledge, and I also want to encourage all of us to do what you need to do when you need to do it, so that we're not going to have Selwyn asking us to set up a Zoom in heaven, and us talking about when we will all go to heaven. I'm sure of that, 100% sure of all the good work we've done here. But we don't want to be there and then talking about, back in 2022 and when we should have done this and we could have done that. Please, let's not do that. Right? Let's keep heaven for what we need to do in heaven. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for that, Vishnu. I mean, you really make me present brought me present to a point of people coming to you and saying things of, I know I get that a lot. People coming up and saying, well, you have inspired me here and inspired me there. And you're right, you don't realize that. And there's one thing I take away from there too, is that not because you don't know it, that means you don't do it. So if you adopt a way of being and being good to others, then that's a good thing. The accolades will come if that's your thing. But in my case, that's not important. What is important is that I've impacted somebody's life, because I believe that when you impact one life, it's a positive domino chain reaction that takes place. That person now turns around and impact thousands of lives, and the chain reaction continues. But I want to ask Yonnick right now, turn it over to Yonnick and ask him some specific questions and also to close us off. But before I do that, I want to thank everybody for joining in. This is amazing to me. I sent out invitation and people, took the time that they could have been doing anything else, but to come and to share. And that says a lot about the need for these kinds of spaces where people can come together, congregate, and share their stories and have meaningful conversations. Yonnick, you made your presentation, very good points. We went around the room and people shared, and we learned a lot from everyone. What did you get out of this? What are you feeling right now about what just happened, transpired here tonight, what you triggered here tonight? And what is your what is your takeaway from this? But more importantly, any advice after listening to everyone? So you want me to go over 3 parts, right?
I got it.
Okay.
Feel, advice.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely got that we need more. I think we need to change the narrative of what a success story is. I don't think the success story should be the flowers and the honey. The success story should be the comeback from a failure. I think we need more of those stories out there. Too many times when we read the books and it's, oh, I did this, or if somebody sees you doing a good job and someone asks you, how did you get there? We tell them all the good stuff. And we're not preparing them mentally, physically, and spiritually for all the bad stuff that will come, because bad things will come in many forms. The business might not fail, the business might be successful, but there will be bumps in the road. So I think those stories are the stories that we need to tell. I hope we can create an outlet where we can tell those stories publicly. I know there's lots and lots of young people out there that are entrepreneurial, that do want to start businesses, that have started businesses, and they need those stories to be told.
Mm-hmm.
How do I feel? I feel optimistic. I think every time there's a communication like this, it impacts each of us. And now in the back of my head, I can constantly remember that, you know what, I need to let people know that failure is going to happen. I also feel happy because listening to everyone speak and listening to everyone's stories, it's told me that I'm doing the right thing. And not for me and not for my bank account, but for the people that I've engaged and that I help, for the people that I've made partners in my businesses. I know Vishnu wanted to know about partnering with Guyanese. I've partnered with all people that are in their early 20s. They're all young people with their individual talents, and I'm helping them hone in on those talents and benefit and make money from those talents. And I'm teaching them to be confident, charge what you have to charge. I know, for example, my graphic designer, he's done so much for free. He's been battling with copyright issues. I don't know if you guys remember, someone designed the Guyana map and it was an island, and the colors, it was all trees and forests. And that image was designed by him, I think 2 years ago. And there are tons of people out there making t-shirts with it and so on. And he's gained no revenue from that. So, but again, we've been able to have conversations, and he understands now. He understands copyright. He understands that there's not too much here in Guyana for now. And he has been developing himself. He's done some amazing 3D work. He's taught himself during the COVID period. He's taught himself to do 3D rendering, and he's been doing amazing work. So I'm rambling. I feel happy that I'm able to impact young people. And what was the final one? You just want me to close?
Yes. What advice do you have for everyone.
I don't think I need to give advice to these people in this room.
Thank you, Yonnick.
Listening to everyone has had amazing stories. It was very interesting to listen to Miss Nikita, what's her last name? Edwards. Miss Edwards and her fear of networking. And I'm happy that she's working on that because I think networking is important. So yeah, I'm just happy to be able to share this space and time with you all.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night until next time we meet.